All right, let's talk about AC systems, how they work, a little bit about things that are common that go wrong with them, and how to do your backyard diagnosis. So anyway, I'm going to go over a couple things, kind of how they work, and then I'll go over a little bit about how to diagnose problems with them. First of all, most air conditioning systems today, or in the US, some of the European cars are much different. I'll go over one of those just real quick. I have one apart, so I'll show you. But have a clutch system where what happens is when you turn your air conditioning on, this clutch engages right here and compresses the Freon. Okay, that compresses the Freon into the condenser, and then what that does is the air going through the condenser, so your fans have to be working, cool the Freon off, then it goes into the tube. Okay, it goes back in through here into something called an orifice tube, or a what's it called, expansion valve, and then takes the Freon from a gas back into a liquid, puts it into your evaporator, which the cool air blows through that and comes through your vents. That's the kind of the basics into a real short thing. Things to know on your air conditioning system: your low side always has a larger hose. So this is the low side. The high side has a small hose, like right here. This is a high side air conditioning hose. So if you follow this around, you're going to find that your high side, the high pressure side, has a small hose. Low pressure side has a large hose. So first of all, if your air conditioning isn't working in your car, the best thing to do first is just trace all your hoses. Go from your compressor over here and just trace the hose all the way along and look for any places where you might see some oil residue. The most common signs of leaks are if there's a little bit of oil right here. If there's a little bit of oil right here, this air conditioning in this truck works perfectly. But if there's a little bit of oil right here, I'm going to assume that there's a Freon leak right here, because oil is thicker than gas, and if the Freon's a gas, when it leaks out, it'll leak out a lot faster than the oil will. So usually if you have a leak, you look for oil. On your compressor, the most common place to get a leak is from the front seal. So look around here and see if there's any oil residue. That'll tell you more than likely that you have a leak around your compressor as well. Leaking compressor, usually the best replacement is just to replace the whole compressor. Some people have tried to change those front seals. Usually what happens is there's other issues inside of there, or the thing's actually loose, so better just to replace the compressor at that point. You look at all your connections, just trace your hoses all the way around, look around your Schrader valve, make sure there's no oil residue around there. Sometimes the Schrader valves like to leak. This one has an old R12 originally in it, but it's been converted to R134, because you can see this is a smaller valve than the newer cars. And this side here, again, still has I think the R12 valve on it, but I know it has R134 in it. So anyway, here's the basics about how the system works. Is on some cars they have either a high pressure or low pressure switch. That's what this is. This is a low pressure switch. Some of the cars, if you go on, and the reason I know that is because it's on the larger side where the larger tubes are. Okay, if you have a switch like this located on your smaller tube, then you have something called a high pressure switch. So what it does is that senses that your pressure on your high side is too high, and it'll shut off the air compressor, shut off the electronics to your air conditioning compressor, so that the compressor will cycle off. On the low pressure switch ones, they basically do the same thing. When the pressure is too low, what it does is it sends a signal to turn off the air conditioning compressor. Every once in a while you find one that actually has both of those things. Here's the most common problems that happen. One, you have a Freon leak. Look for those hoses. Look to see if you have oil residue. More than likely, if that thing has some oil residue around it, it's going to be leaking there. Typically, you can actually do more testing. You can buy a dye test thing and add dye to your system, and then you'll see with a ultraviolet light that it's leaking out of that area. Usually when I do it, if I see a oil residue, I just replace the hose. More than 90% of the time, it solves the problem. It's over at that point. So rather than going through all that additional work and trying to test something that I know is going to be bad, it's just kind of a waste of time to do that. The next thing is your compressor sometimes is bad, okay, and or you're just low on Freon. Sometimes it just leaks out slowly, one little area in every other year or so. You have to add some Freon to it. First thing to do is turn on your air conditioning system and turn on your compressor and see if this clutch engages. If this clutch engages and runs for a while, and it does something called cycle. In other words, you turn it on and all of a sudden it engages for a little while, and all of a sudden it disengages, and it engages for a little while, and it disengages. Usually what it's telling you is that the higher or low pressure switch is doing something called cycling, and it's sensing that there's too low a pressure or too high a pressure, and it's going ahead and turning off the air conditioning compressor to protect it from overheating. That usually is that you're low on Freon. So one of the things that I've known over the years is if I get in the car and the compressor is cycling on and off and on and off and on and off, then I'm going to say that it's low on Freon. I'll go ahead and add the proper amount, of Freon in it, and until it stops cycling. Usually I'll just run it, add some Freon, add some Freon, add some Freon, until I run it and it just stops cycling and just kind of runs all the time, and that's usually where it wants to be. It should cycle every 5 minutes or so. Okay, so if it's running for about 5 minutes and it cycles off and it cycles back on, that's kind of normal. That's what you're looking for. That's basically without any gauges. So the other thing you can do is, let's say your compressor is not turning on. Basically this is a very simple circuit. All it is an electromagnet, okay, that's charged right here. So one of these is a power, one of these is a ground. What you can do is put a test light on here and find which one is the power. When you turn your air conditioning on, you can see if it's getting power here. If you're getting power here and you've got the other side grounded and the compressor doesn't turn on, the clutch is bad. Again, you can replace the clutch by itself, but it's usually better off just going ahead and replacing the whole compressor unit. There's videos on that out there. The other thing that can go bad is your low or high pressure switch can be bad. So the way you do that is you first check your Freon, make sure you have plenty of Freon in the system. If you don't have enough Freon in it, of course, again, it's going to cycle on and off, or it just won't turn on at all. And what you can do is you can take and pull off your wire connector here, and those two little things, the connectors there, you can actually do something called bypass it. Temporarily run a jumper wire from here to here, and if the compressor turns on, that tells you more than likely that this valve is bad, and that can be done in the high pressure or the low pressure switch side. Now don't just bypass it and just leave it that way. You could cause your system to overheat by doing that. It's just a temporary way to test your system and make sure it's working. Now if I did that and the compressor didn't turn on, I bypassed this and the compressor didn't turn on, I would also check at that point with a test light to see that I'm getting power to it, because the thing that also could be bad is something called an AC relay. Your relay, so this is operated through a relay system. This is, once you bypass this, it goes through a relay and then goes to that. So if you bypass this and there's still no power here, then your relay is probably bad, or the fuse. AC systems are actually very easy to fix. There's only a few things that go wrong. There's leaks, there's the compressor, there's this valve here goes bad, or the other thing that can happen is your orifice tube can be plugged. Now, if your orifice tube is plugged, more than likely your compressor has come apart inside, and then some of the metal shavings have gotten in through the system and gone into your orifice tube, which is located on this car. Usually it's at some point right before the condenser, which in this car the condenser is actually underneath the hood, so it's a little easier to see. Usually if I take this off right here, they'll be inside there with the pair of needle-nose. You'll pull out the orifice tube out of there, and if you see metal shavings in that, then again, you might want to go ahead and replace the compressor at the same time and flush the lines out. So what happens is when that compressor goes out, it'll shove some metal shavings in here, fill up that orifice tube, and a lot of times it will fill up the condenser as well with some stuff. Now, every once in a while you get lucky. You can just take and blow a bunch of Freon and oil through it and clean out the condenser. But most of the time, it's a good idea that if your compressor's gone bad and shown metal shavings into your system, to go ahead and replace the condenser, because there's tons, it's like a radiator. There's tons and tons of little spaces inside there. There's all kinds of stuff inside there, and trying to get all the metal shavings out of that is usually pretty well impossible. So again, I would just replace the condenser if that's happened, and then also replace the orifice tube and the compressor. Now, usually if you've gone that far, you're going to have to replace this guy too. This is either the receiver dryer or the accumulator. One of the two. There's two different systems. Ones have accumulator, ones have receiver dryer. This big canister type of thing, every one of these air conditioning systems has one of these, and what it does is it's there to clean the Freon and put it before it goes back to the compressor. So usually if metal shavings have gotten in your system, then you want to go ahead and replace the condenser, replace the compressor, clean out the lines, blow them all out really good, and then also replace the receiver dryer or accumulator. Another thing that can happen is improper airflow through your system. So let's say you're driving down the road and your air conditioning works really good when you're on the freeway, but when you get into the city, it just stops working almost altogether. That's when you need to take a look at your fans and make sure your fans are operating correctly. If your fans aren't blowing really well, what happens is it's not cooling off the Freon that's in the condenser so that it can properly go through the system and become a liquid again, because it's not able to cool that off. Because basically, in basic terms, you're using Freon as a vehicle to go through your system, okay, and you're taking all the hot air out of the Freon, okay, and then allowing it to go back into your receiver or into your car so that the cool air will be inside. That's just kind of a layman's way to explain it. So if the fans aren't working properly, it's not cooling off the Freon so that when it gets in the car, it can be cold air. So you got to have proper fans working. So basically, those are the most common things that happen to the system. If you've kind of got the idea of how it works, it's a little bit easier to diagnose. Some of the tools you can get to help you diagnose your Freon are some of these gauges. They have these on Amazon pretty cheap. This is a nice little cheap, easy one to use. The thing I like about this one is it's very simple for you guys that don't know much about AC. Instead of, some of them have this little valve thing you have to turn on and off. Some of you guys may not be able to figure that out very easily. These ones here, they just pop on, a quick disconnect like an air coupler. You just push it right on. And the high side and the low side are pretty self-explanatory. You can't hook them up backwards. Remember, the red side is going to be the high side. It's going to be the smaller tubes. It has the larger hookup. And the blue side is going to be the low side that has the smaller valve to hook up. You can't hook them up backwards. If you're in the US, if you're going to take any of your Freon out, you should have a person do that on the recovery system. But if you're anywhere else in the world where it's legal to do so, you could have these two valves turned off when you hook it up. If you need to take the Freon out of your system, if you just open these two things, what it does is it takes the Freon down this tube right here, and it actually lets it go into the air. I suppose in some places of the world, hypothetically, it might be legal to do so. I don't know. But if somebody did that in those places that it was legal to do so, they could just run it into the air and it would evacuate all the Freon out of the system. And that could be done where it's legal to do so again, hypothetically. Another nice little tool to have, again, if it's legal to do so where you're at, is they have these vacuum pumps right here. So before, let's say you did all this work and you replaced your compressor and you replaced your receiver dryer and you replaced your condenser or just your compressor alone, whatever you did some work on your air conditioning system, you had it all removed and recovered properly, and you wanted to go ahead and put new Freon in. What you do is you can get one of these things. They have these at Harbor Freight Tools. Also, they believe they have them on Amazon. Maybe I'll put some links in the video for these two tools. And what you do is you hook up air to this side, okay? And with these two valves open, so you, oh, there's a little bit of Freon in here. That's weird. Just in the lines. That's not really anything. You open up these two valves right here, okay? You open up those two valves, and then what it does is when you hook up air to this, okay, and you have this thing hooked up like this, okay, it will actually start bringing your system down into a vacuum. So you'll see these two gauges, this one here and this one, will go down to where you're about 30 to 40 inches of vacuum. Now, what the reason you do that for is if there's any impurities in your system, those impurities will cause wear on your compressor. And what this does is water boils at a very low temperature if you have it at a vacuum. Okay, in other words, let's say you're up in the mountains and you're boiling water. It takes a lot less temperature to boil water in the mountains than it does in the desert, just so you know that. The same thing that happens here is when you bring it into a vacuum, here, water can boil at like ambient temperature, whatever it is outside. It could be 60 degrees. If you have it down to 30 inches or 40 inches of vacuum, it'll be boiling into steam. And what that does is when you use this vacuum pump here to remove all the air down to a vacuum, it'll also turn all the water in your system to steam and remove it from your system. So it's very important that you have one of these type of things here to remove all your system down to a vacuum before you put Freon in. Now, on most cars, if you look around, you'll find an underhood label like this one here that will say what type of Freon's in your system and how much to put in. And you can look at that label and that'll tell you how much to put in your system. So this one doesn't have a label on it anymore. This is an old truck. It's a 91, so it's pretty old. It doesn't have a label, but you look at that label and that'll tell you how much Freon to put it back in your system. Most of the new cars are 1 to 1 1/4 cans or something like that. So keep that in mind. Don't put too much in the system. Don't go putting 3 cans in your system like the old R12, the new ones with the R134. You really need to just put in just the proper amount. For instance, if you overcharge your system, you'll notice that this high side will go way up into the red or the blue, high part of the blue, and this part here will be still at a higher pressure. It might go up into the, it should be typically in the 2 white areas. Unless it's a really hot day, then sometimes it'll kind of go up into the blue on the high side. So that's kind of nice. These little gauges here have these color coded things, and they kind of tell you where the Freon should be. So it's usually going to be in the white areas where it's going to be operating correctly. If you see up close, that's the pressures. If you don't have those things on your gauges. So again, if you're in the United States or maybe Canada, I don't know the laws everywhere in the world, but if you're, make sure you follow those things. If you're in a place where it's legal to do so, again, you could remove the Freon and put it into the air wherever it's legal to do that. I don't know the rules and laws where you are, but typically if you're in the US, you're supposed to use a recovery system to recover your Freon. You should probably take it to a certified technician and have them do that. It's kind of crazy that they need a certified technician to push a button. That's basically all he does, is hooks up 2 lines, pushes a button, has the machine to recover it, but that's the law. Whatever. I'm not a legal person. I'm not a legal analyst or any of that stuff, so I don't know the laws. I'm suggest talking to your lawyer about laws, not me. Just a little bit about how it's done, the process, and then maybe that'll help you figure out how to figure out what's wrong with your system and get your AC back working. I kind of get frustrated when I see so many people with their windows down when it's 105, 108 degrees out, when it's something this simple to fix. I'll talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let's hope this helps you out.